Who were the Persians, and what did they look like? The Persians, who lived in what is now Iran, built one of the world's greatest and most powerful empires between 550 and 330 BC. An empire spanning from the eastern Mediterranean to India's western frontier, the Persian Empire was a melting pot of civilizations and ethnicities. Alexander the Great captured it during his conquest of Asia in the 4th century BC. Indo-Iranian people who came to the Iranian plateau about 2500 BC from the Caucasus or Central Asia. They were linked to the Bactrians, Medes, and Parthians as a pastoral people that wandered the steppes with their herds. The Achaemenid clan was described by Herodotus as being split into various tribes in the 5th century BC. In the 9th century BC, Shalmaneser III encountered a people known as Parsua, who lived in what is now southern Iran. This inscription is inscribed on his black obelisk, which celebrates and chronicles Shalmaneser III's exploits and military battles. According to the British Museum, the limestone obelisk was etched about 825 BC. With their capital at Anshan, an ancient Elamite metropolis, the Persians had established themselves in southern Iran by the 1st millennium BC. The Persians had rulers descended from a semi-mythical figure called Achaemenids. The Assyrians and subsequently the Medes, an Indo-Iranian race that lived in northern Iran, ruled the Persians for centuries. An ambitious and talented emperor called Cyrus rose to prominence in the mid-6th century BC. Cyrus the Great rebelled against the Medes, vanquished them, and then went on a conquest expedition, adding Lydia, Elam, and Babylon to his expanding empire. According to Live Science, his Achaemenid Empire was one of the world's greatest empires, both geographically and demographically, when he died in 530 BC. One of Cyrus's prominent biographers is Herodotus. History's Eye describes how Astyages, the Medes ruler, was prompted by a series of nightmares to try to assassinate the baby Cyrus. But Cyrus lived, grew up, and defeated the Medes. A manufactured fable, according to Britannica, to prove that Cyrus' rule was predetermined. Cyrus was a great administrator as well as a successful general, NewsRme stated. Instead of forcing his captives to accept his culture, Cyrus was known for demonstrating kindness to his conquered kingdoms. A liberator like Cyrus, who helped liberate the Jews from Babylon and rebuilt the Second Temple in Jerusalem in the Hebrew Bible, is praised in the books of Isaiah, Ezra and other religious texts in the Bible. NewsRme stated Cyrus knew that to properly lead a big kingdom, a monarch needed to be kind and empathetic. They learned from Assyrian and Babylonian civilizations that fear and intimidation were ineffective long-term tactics. Instead, they were driven by the notion of Vispadana, which means many persons, according to NewsRme. Vispadana acknowledges that the empire is made up of many distinct cultures, and that those cultures are beneficial to the empire due to their diverse talents and abilities. Parts of Persepolis, the Achaemenid Empire's historic capital in Shiraz, Iran, are now UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Several Persepolis paintings show the Persian ruler as a unifier. His subjects, from many various nationalities and cultures, are shown in grateful positions rather than as prisoners or victims. Cambyses II brought Egypt to the empire but was less competent than his father. After Cambyses died, which Britannica says was caused by an accident while he was on a campaign in Egypt, his younger brother Bardia took the throne. A Persian aristocrat called Darius succeeded him as king in 522 BC. Darius brought the Achaemenid Empire to its peak. He reinforced Egyptian victories and expanded his kingdom into India and Thrace, Balkans. Among other things, he changed the empire's legal code, started a postal service, and made sure the Persian system of weights, measurements, and money was the same all over the empire, according to the World History Encyclopedia. During Darius' reign, the Greco-Persian Wars started. Several Greek city-states, most notably Athens and Sparta, fought the Persian Empire in these wars. Initial revolts by Anatolian Greek towns like Miletus against the Persians. The insurrection was sponsored by Athens and Eretria, but it failed. He dispatched an army to punish the Greek towns. A contingent of Athenian hoplites, heavily armed foot soldiers, overcame Darius' armies at Marathon in 490 BC despite being outnumbered. In the Second Greco-Persian War, Xerxes, Darius' son, assembled a vast war fleet and attacked Greece in 480 BC. But, like the earlier invasion, this one failed. According to the World History Encyclopedia, Darius' fleet was destroyed at Salamis, while his land troops were beaten at Plataea by an army of allied Greek towns commanded by Sparta. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great crossed the Hellespont and invaded Persia. The youthful king destroyed Darius III's forces in a succession of masterfully planned and conducted wars. According to ancient origins, Alexander went on to ruin Persepolis, but he later buried the slain monarch and married his daughter Statera. Alexander began to embrace Persian habits and mannerisms, such as dressed in Persian attire. Many of his Greek and Macedonian friends didn't agree with him because of this. According to Britannica, he also forced many of his Macedonian commanders and generals to marry Persian women to foster a cultural alliance. As a result of Alexander's death in 323 BC, Britannica says the Ptolemaic and Seleucid dynasties influenced most of the erstwhile Persian Empire. The Parthians re-established native Persian control in the 2nd century BC.